Yep.
Call meeting to order of the wastewater committee meeting, June 17th, 2025.
Okay, before I hand it over to Eric, as I was thinking about how to introduce this item, like earlier I talked about how, consolidation is not uncommon, but it doesn't happen very often. And I think, Director Ringen would say that we have some policies and procedures in place so we know how to step through these things before today. So we've been talking with Genevieve for better than a year on this consolidation effort. I don't know when's the last time we did a sewer consolidation. I think since the 70s. Do you know when we took on, were you here when we took on Mono Village? Was that just the water or was it water and sewer?
Sewers before my time.
Yeah.
So it's been.
So this is relatively new, uncharted territory to have a consolidation of a sewer system. So yeah, anyway, I'll turn it over to Eric.
Okay, all right, well, I just want to point out Genevieve is online and hi Genevieve. And so I'll just share a screen real quick. This is going to be somewhat similar in format to the last meeting we had related to water. And I will give you an orientation of kind of who's involved and where we are in the world. Okay. All right, so these are the stakeholders, the folks involved in this particular project. And I've listed Division of Financial Assistance, we call it DFA here in California, the funding agency. Regional Water Quality Control Board is the regulatory agency for wastewater. Little different, the previous meeting we had was Division of Drinking Water, which is related to the drinking water side. The consultant here is Moonshot Missions, and that is Genevieve, who's online here. Harmony Communities is the mobile home park owner, and then of course we all know TUD is the potential utility provider. I used a map that was related to our water system only to because it was convenient and because the boundary of Sonora Estates is shown there. The purple, not to be confused, is our water service area. I didn't have a convenient map of our sewer service area, but sewer service is closest, well, we serve Columbia. And then if you can see this faint line through here, this is Parrots Ferry Road. And so we have sewer infrastructure all within Parrots Ferry Road. So you can see there's quite a distance between the park and the closest sewer infrastructure. In addition, what you can kind of see, this area here is the airport. So the airport is a big physical obstacle or boundary between where the park is and where some of our sewer lines are. 87 service connections. Best I could see is that the average daily flow was around 20,000 gallons per day. And Director Ringen pointed out in previous conversations that they used to have a pond system out there. And so they had septic tanks and then they flowed into some perk ponds. I think there were 5, maybe even 6 ponds as recent as 2003, 2004. Those have been replaced with a subsurface drip system. I don't know if they have any violations in the park right now. And so I'm not fully aware of what prompted the study. However, we do know that, and actually I've listed Harmony is not the owner because we're talking Sonora Estates, but we just talked about how there's an ownership structure that Integrated Community Solutions is looking at for this park that may be part of the motivation for them to try to consolidate. And the ownership structure would involve each individual dwelling owner owning a portion or their own space in the park. So I don't know, Genevieve, if you have anything you want to add in terms of how this study came about. I know, so you might not be used to using Zoom, but
Her audio is
that's
working.
that's okay. That's okay.
We can see it.
Yeah, no problem, Genevieve. So that's where we are in the world. Here's a picture of the park. And off out of the screen view here is South Airport Road. The old pond system, which is now the subsurface drip system, is just out of view here on the side.
Lift station or plural?
They do, so my understanding is they are able to gravity feed to a lift station. And then it's pumped into the septic tanks and then out into the drip system. So there might actually be another pump system gone after the septic tanks.
Just a clarification, is a leach field the same as a drip system?
It's not, it's a little different. Leach fields, rely on gravity and leaching in. The subsurface drip has emitters. So it is pressurized and evenly distributed based on the emitters. So there's a slightly different design. I'm not sure why the park chose to do that design. The documentation in the file goes back to, like I said, around 2003. And I think they had a problem with the ponds. And so they converted them.
And they can run 20,000 gallons a day through there.
That was the design back in 2003, 2004. I'm a little in the dark of what the current status is of the system and if there's any violations or if they've derated the system due to the ground conditions out there. Here's a scenario view of the park. Again, you can see, this is South Airport Road. Here's the grass runway. And then farther over is the regular runway and then the air attack bases up off the view here. So, in order to get to TUD's infrastructure, the most direct route would be to go directly across the airport. However, that probably isn't likely. It's also not easy to maintain for our staff if that were to happen. So the more likely consolidation route would be to come down South Airport Road and go all the way around, better depicted by this. And that would necessarily involve a pump here at the park and a force main all the way through tying into the Parrots Ferry force main somewhere in here. There's a lot of details to work out, so this is very preliminary. The alternatives that I think Genevieve's team would be evaluating if we moved on with the study would be the do nothing, a partial consolidation, meaning, the park would be responsible for their collection system and the lift station, and either the force main 2 up to the point of connection, or possibly TUD would maintain the portion in the public right of way up to the point of connection. Those are, things yet to be determined. The full consolidation alternative involves replacement of all the collection system, all the clean outs, everything that's, all the issues that we've talked about with mobile home parks and not knowing what the condition of the infrastructure is and what's in the ground and what utility conflicts may exist would come to bear if we were to replace the full collection system. But then TUD would be billing each individual space directly. Now, I want to make it clear that we're not asking for any action from the committee. This is purely informational. We are much earlier in the process on this project than we are on some of our water consolidation studies. In this case, Moonshot Missions has an agreement with the Division of Financial Assistance to prepare a funding request to actually do the alternatives analysis and then proceed with the construction funding application if one of these alternatives involves construction and connecting to.
Genevieve sent a message. She said there are no current violations.
Okay, well, thank you, Genevieve. Yeah.
And I was gonna add, I joined on my phone too, so
Oh, there we go.
I'm here. Yeah, be happy to speak further on any of this. But yeah, there are no violations besides reporting violations from about 2023 that were resolved, so nothing public health related and no enforcement action.
Very good. And so, Genevieve, correct me if I'm wrong, but at this point, we would be in the future asking the full board to consider adopting a resolution that would designate TUD as an applicant for funding. And that application would involve doing all of the planning and then doing all of the engineering design. And then once that's done, you would then make application for construction funding. It's a bit different than the water system. The way wastewater funding works, the district is in the driver's seat in terms of hiring a consultant to do all the planning work. At our previous meeting, GHD was hired by the state. So I just want to make that distinction. In this case, TUD would be hiring someone like GHD or another consultant to go through the full alternatives analysis. Genevieve, did I get that right?
Yeah, so our role is really related to the revolving fund application and just making sure that that gets through with no hitches, helping with negotiation of the financial contract, that kind of stuff. And then if you need any help with procurement of the consultants down the line, like you mentioned, GHD is in a similar role for the water side, but they also have the capacity to do the full alternatives assessment, do some of the design, and that kind of stuff. So right now we're looking at a planning and design loan that would cover all of the elements that are necessary up to the point of applying for construction funding. And because it would be for a community that is small and severely disadvantaged, it would be automatically funded by the state. And there'd be a really high likelihood of grant funding as well.
Good question. So does TUD get reimbursed for staff time and effort in pursuing this or facilitating this or coordinating it?
Yes, that would be an eligible expense moving forward. Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
Don't really have a whole lot more. I know it's a little, like I said, it's much earlier in the process. Like I don't have a bunch of cost estimates or alternatives to share. What I think it would be good is if we are going to take this, if you decide to take this to the full board, we may go ahead and include the resolution for the board to consider adopting. The resolution just essentially states that, you're authorizing TUD to make application and for Dawn to sign some of the paperwork associated with that. And then you'd be giving us the green light to hire a consultant and then also track our own time and bill it for reimbursement. We're years potentially away from any construction actually occurring out there, and there's other issues that we'd have to deal with similar to the water consolidation related to, liens and ownership structure and all those things too.
Hey, Eric, I know you touched on it, and that you might have just touched on it again, but there's very different rules when it comes to applying for these grants from the water side and the clean water side. Clean water side is the sewer side, the water division is electric side. They have two different methodologies.
Clean water side is the sewer side.
Is clean, yeah, okay. So, if I understand right, on the clean water side, the lead agency would be us. That's not just because it's, this mobile home park. If any scenario on the clean water side, the lead agency would be the receiving agency.
Okay.
Whereas on the water side, the lead agency is the owner wanting to consolidate with us. It's just two different separate ways of doing business.
Would there be a case where we would hire a consultant and then not be reimbursed if the grant didn't go through?
Great question. No, so if the board adopted this resolution I'm describing, authorizing us to make application, Moonshot Missions would prepare essentially that application. Once the project got funded, then the funding agreement would come to the district. The board would have to accept that, and then we would hire the consultant only after we had the funding.
Sounds fine. So, no action required, just maybe take it to the board.
Most likely, yeah. I mean, Rich is here as, collection superintendent, he understands the hydraulics better, and if you have any specific questions about that, I know the presentation was pretty clear. There's not a lot of alternatives, right?
No, the pretty much only two alternatives are under the airport or all the way around the airport. Yeah, that's.
So, I mean, was there a do nothing alternative in this case too?
I feel like there probably would be.
Said there was.
Yeah.
There's a do nothing?
Standard.
What does that do nothing mean? You just don't agree with anything?
The park continues to operate as it is. It doesn't have any violations, but we just know that it's difficult to, operate and maintain these very small systems. It's not very economical, and we know Integrity Community Solutions, the owner has some desire to kind of change the ownership structure. So that may involve getting out of the utility business and letting the owners of the park actually own their own land and then be treated like it wasn't really a mobile home park, but like development.
So the choices will come to us as to whether we wanna go, full in to each space or not, but then we have to decide what works better for us.
Yeah, to that point, it sounds like the collection system within the park is in pretty good condition. They've done some recent CCTV assessments. It would be, of course, much simpler if the project is just connecting directly to the park, but yeah, that's up to you guys to evaluate if you want to take ownership of the collection system within the park itself.
And do you know the ownership situation now in the park? Who owns what?
So it was recently acquired by ICS, which owns the full park and is looking to, put it into a residentially owned structure, kind of a cooperative structure. So that would transition the ownership to the residents ultimately.
Can they do that without this project going through?
I'm not, Jessica would have to speak to that if they have, kind of their no action alternative lined out. I think that their number one choice is by far having this connection involved. But in the case that it doesn't work out, they might have to evaluate those alternatives.
And can they sell the spaces to people without having a utility hookup available? Same thing I was asking before, can they do this without
Yeah, I can't speak to their model and how they turn their communities residentially owned. I'm sure there might be some cases where there's not an option to connect to a utility too far away. Communities that are a bit too remote, and they might have some methodologies in place for how they take care of that. But I do know that they've said the cost of maintenance and operations, I think they hire an operator to the tune of, several $1,000s a month or something. That's pretty cost prohibitive long term for the community, and they've recognized that the useful life of their package plant is approaching its end. So they're just anticipating some long term, high expenses for this pretty kind of lower income community, and recognize that longevity and long term sustainability would be increased if they were connected to the system.
Okay. So they could remain the utility company even if they sold it, it's a matter of cost.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Is there anything else that we want to go over? Any questions?
It's not related to the specifics, but Moonshot Consulting, can you tell us how the name was established? I was just kind of curious.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I can give you the little elevator pitch for our organization. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We were founded by the former director of DC's water system, who was going to conferences and talking to utility managers all around the country and realizing like how few resources some of the smaller guys have in the utility space. And so he formed this nonprofit with a group of utility experts. I have an engineering background, engineering consulting, but we have former operators, former utility directors from all around the country. And we now operate under EPA funding as well as some state funding, like in this case, state of California. We have a contract to provide no cost technical assistance to utilities. So we were paired with Sonora Estates through the water board and their division of financial assistance, which we have a contract with.
Fascinating, thank you.
One thing I wanted to add is that I like to point out, if this authorization goes through and we make an application and the project is selected on the fundable list and all of that, it's not a binding contract yet. So you don't have to agree to take out the loan. I'm sure since you've dealt with SRF funds before, you probably know that, but I think some people are a little hesitant sometimes to put in an application thinking that it means, oh, for sure, we're gonna do this project. And then down the line, if you do planning and design and decide it's not gonna be feasible, it's also not binding to fall through with construction, so.
Well, thank you, Genevieve, and thank you, Eric, for a real clean presentation, I think. I think we have a clear shot at what to do. All right. Is there anything else we need to do?
Good.